Padre Pio, the great mystic of Pietrelcina, whose life was a living witness to the power of divine grace, often spoke about the hidden ways God reveals His blessings. Unlike worldly success or material wealth, the true marks of God's favor are often veiled in forms that the eyes of the world fail to appreciate. Padre Pio, who bore the wounds of Christ on his own body and endured both physical and spiritual trials with unwavering faith, understood deeply that blessings from God are not always wrapped in ease and comfort. Instead, they often come disguised as challenges, virtues, and experiences that purify the soul and draw it closer to the heart of the Creator. Throughout his life, Padre Pio guided thousands of souls toward holiness, reminding them that God's greatest blessings are often hidden in plain sight. He taught that if you possess even one of these three special things, you are already abundantly blessed, even if you do not yet recognize it. These are not material possessions, nor are they honors given by the world. Rather, they are spiritual treasures, gifts that sustain the soul, fortify it against despair, and prepare it for the eternal joy of heaven. Padre Pio's wisdom invites us to shift our perspective, to see beyond the surface of life, and to recognize the divine hand guiding our journey through both trials and triumphs. The first of these sacred blessings is a heart that longs for God, even in the midst of doubt or struggle. Padre Pio taught that the very desire for God, no matter how weak or wavering, is itself a precious grace. He explained that our longing for the divine is not something we manufacture on our own. It is a spark ignited by God Himself within our souls. If you find within yourself a yearning for deeper communion with God, a restless hunger for truth, or a sorrowful ache for His presence, take heart. Padre Pio assured that this is a sign of God's active work in your life. Such longing draws you toward prayer, repentance, and trust, even when circumstances seem bleak. It is the inner compass that keeps you oriented toward heaven, no matter how stormy the seas around you. Padre Pio often emphasized that those who feel this divine longing are among the most blessed, because their hearts remain open to grace. He warned that the greatest danger is not in struggling or falling, but in becoming indifferent. Indifference is a spiritual coldness that deadens the soul, while longing keeps it alive and seeking. Even when prayer feels dry or God seems distant, the mere fact that you continue to seek Him is a powerful testament to His presence in your life. Padre Pio urged the faithful never to underestimate the value of this yearning, for it is the golden thread that binds the soul to God, leading it forward through darkness into the light of divine union. The second sign of blessedness Padre Pio identified is a heart that forgives freely, even when forgiveness is difficult. Forgiveness, he taught, is one of the clearest reflections of God's own mercy at work within us. It liberates the soul from the heavy chains of resentment and anger, making room for peace and grace to enter. Padre Pio experienced firsthand the pain of betrayal and false accusation. Yet, he always chose forgiveness, following the example of Christ Himself. He reminded his spiritual children that to forgive is not to excuse wrongdoing, but to surrender judgment to God and to free oneself from the toxic weight of hatred. If you find the strength to forgive others, especially those who have deeply wounded you, know that you are profoundly blessed. This is a grace not given lightly, but one that brings immense spiritual freedom. Padre Pio often explained that forgiveness is a hidden strength, not a weakness. In fact, he taught that it is one of the most difficult commands given to us by Christ, yet also one of the most rewarding in terms of spiritual growth. When we forgive, especially when it is difficult to do so, we imitate the boundless mercy of God himself. Padre Pio would remind his followers that Christ, even in his agony on the cross, prayed for the forgiveness of his executioners. If we find it within ourselves to forgive, particularly in moments when our hearts are heavy with pain and betrayal, it is a sure sign that grace is alive and active in our souls. According to Padre Pio, such forgiveness opens the gates of heaven not only for ourselves, but also invites healing for those who have harmed us. Furthermore, Padre Pio warned of the dangers of holding on to bitterness. He described resentment as a poison that, once allowed to take root in the heart, spreads and darkens the soul. He explained that those who refuse to forgive build barriers between themselves and the mercy of God. But conversely, when we choose to forgive, even imperfectly, we tear down those walls and allow God's healing light to penetrate our wounds. Padre Pio acknowledged that forgiveness is often a journey rather than a single moment, and he encouraged the faithful to pray continually for the grace to forgive fully. Each small step toward forgiveness, he taught, is a step toward holiness and freedom. The third blessing Padre Pio revealed is the gift of suffering born with patience and trust. Now, this may seem surprising, even troubling, to those who view suffering as purely negative. Yet, Padre Pio, who endured immense physical and spiritual trials throughout his life, saw suffering as a mysterious yet invaluable tool in God's plan for the sanctification of souls. He taught that when we unite our sufferings to Christ's own passion, they become channels of grace, not only for ourselves but also for others. Padre Pio described suffering as a refining fire, purifying the soul, detaching it from worldly concerns, and drawing it ever closer to the heart of God. If you are enduring hardship, whether physical illness, emotional pain, or spiritual dryness, and you bear it with even a small measure of patience, you are among the blessed in God's eyes. Padre Pio reminded the faithful that suffering, though painful, is never meaningless when offered to God. He would often say that in moments of deep anguish, we are closest to the crucified Christ. These moments of shared suffering are sacred, for they allow us to participate in the redemptive mission of our Savior. He encouraged his spiritual children to see their trials not as punishments, but as precious opportunities to grow in virtue, to strengthen their faith, and to intercede for others in need of grace. Padre Pio was known to tell those who suffered greatly, "Do not fear. The Lord is with you in your pain, and through it, he is shaping you for eternal glory." In fact, Padre Pio himself offered his many ailments and agonies for the conversion of sinners and the relief of souls in purgatory. He bore the visible wounds of Christ, the stigmata, for 50 years, enduring not only physical torment, but also spiritual trials that tested his endurance to the limit. Through it all, he remained steadfast, trusting completely in God's providence. He taught that if we too embrace our sufferings and unite them to Christ, our pain is transformed into powerful prayer. Even the silent tears shed in private become jewels in the crown of heaven. If you are carrying a heavy burden today and continue to persevere with trust in God's mercy, know that Padre Pio would count you among the truly blessed. Padre Pio's deep understanding of suffering was not born from theory, but from his own lived experience. He carried both visible wounds and invisible spiritual crosses that weighed heavily upon him every single day. He endured relentless attacks from the enemy, harsh criticisms from those who misunderstood him, and immense physical pain that would have crushed a weaker man. Yet, in the midst of all this, Padre Pio found profound joy. He often explained that those who suffer patiently, offering their pain to God, are participating in the mystery of redemption. He reminded his followers that suffering is one of the rarest and most precious gifts God entrusts to his most beloved souls, not as a curse, but as a means of sanctification and an offering for the salvation of others. He would tell the faithful that when they endure suffering without bitterness, when they choose to trust in God's providence despite their trials, they become hidden co-redeemers alongside Christ. Padre Pio often cited the teaching of St. Paul, who wrote that we complete in our own bodies what is lacking in the sufferings of Christ, not because Christ's sacrifice was incomplete, but because God, in his mercy, allows us to share in the work of salvation through our own hardships. Padre Pio saw this participation as a profound privilege, a sacred collaboration between the human soul and the divine plan of redemption. If you suffer silently, with dignity and trust, you are not alone. You walk in the footsteps of Padre Pio and countless saints who have transformed their trials into blessings for the whole Church. Padre Pio also emphasized that suffering purifies the heart, stripping away attachments to the fleeting comforts of this world and focusing our gaze on the eternal. He taught that in the crucible of suffering, we are refined like gold in the fire. Pride, vanity, selfishness, all these are burned away, leaving behind a soul more radiant and prepared for union with God. He would comfort those who suffered by reminding them that the crown of thorns precedes the crown of glory, and that no suffering, however small or great, is ever wasted when united with the love of Christ. In this way, our earthly sufferings become the seeds of heavenly joy, and every tear shed in faith is transformed into a pearl of great price in the kingdom of heaven. Moreover, Padre Pio reassured the faithful that those who embrace suffering with trust are powerful instruments of intercession. He explained that their sufferings can be offered for the conversion of sinners, for the souls in purgatory, and for the sanctification of the Church. In this hidden apostolate, even those who feel powerless due to illness or circumstance find immense spiritual purpose. Padre Pio taught that there is no greater charity than to unite our sufferings to Christ's passion for the salvation of others. Through this self-offering, we participate in the divine mercy of God, becoming living prayers that rise to heaven and draw down graces upon the world. If you bear suffering today, Padre Pio would remind you that you are not burdened in vain. You are a vessel of grace, chosen to carry light into the darkness. As we bring this reflection to its conclusion, let us remember the heart of Padre Pio's message. True blessedness does not always come clothed in the robes of worldly success, comfort, or ease. Often it is wrapped in longing for God, in the difficult yet liberating act of forgiveness, and in the refining fire of suffering embraced with trust. These three things, while perhaps not outwardly glamorous, are precious treasures in the eyes of heaven. Padre Pio, who lived a life of profound closeness to Christ, assures us that if we possess even one of these gifts, we are truly blessed beyond measure. Such blessings prepare our souls for union with God and open us to the deep workings of His grace. Padre Pio's life itself is a living testimony to these truths. Despite bearing the physical wounds of Christ and enduring intense spiritual battles, he never wavered in his pursuit of holiness. He longed for God with every fiber of his being, forgave those who slandered and attacked him, and accepted his sufferings with a peace that astonished all who knew him. He saw in every trial an opportunity to grow closer to the crucified Lord, and he encouraged his spiritual children to adopt the same perspective. He taught that by embracing our crosses, we participate in the mystery of redemption, becoming co-workers with Christ in the salvation of souls. His witness gives us courage to view our own lives through this sacred lens. Moreover, Padre Pio emphasized that these blessings are not reserved for an elite few, but are accessible to every soul willing to open itself to God's grace. Whether you are wealthy or poor, healthy or sick, celebrated or hidden in obscurity, you can possess these treasures if your heart is open. Longing for God, forgiving freely, and bearing suffering with trust are choices we make each day, regardless of our circumstances. Padre Pio urged the faithful never to underestimate the power of these spiritual riches, for they are the currency of heaven. In cultivating them, we store up treasures that no thief can steal, no rust can destroy, and no time can diminish. So today, examine your life with the eyes of faith. Do you feel a restless hunger for God, even amid uncertainty? Have you struggled to forgive, but still strive toward mercy? Are you carrying a heavy burden with patience and prayer? If so, take heart. Padre Pio would say that you are truly blessed, walking a path that draws you ever nearer to the heart of Christ. Let his words encourage you to persevere, to deepen your trust in God, and to continue cultivating these precious gifts. And remember always Padre Pio's comforting counsel: pray, hope, and don't worry. Worry is useless. God is merciful and will hear your prayer. May his intercession guide you, and may you discover in these hidden blessings the true joy of being counted among God's beloved.